Who's not coming down the drive? Who's not coming down the drive? And the me what she is red and white. Me what she is red and white. Ain't nothing finer in the way. Ain't nothing finer in the way. You drunk on watching straight to bed. You drunk on watching straight to bed. Come on, come on.
What's up, y'all? This is John and Mike back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Tonight we have on Matt from the Land Grant Holy Land podcast to talk about the 1 versus 3 should be 2 matchup in the shoe this weekend. But before we get to that, how you been? What are you drinking?
I'm doing great. I just have some water here. Keep the pipes lubed up for the podcast. I got your rundown of the questions you're going to ask, and there's a lot to get into. So I wanted to make sure that I could give you the best on-air vocal stylings I possibly could.
We appreciate it.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, but no, I'm good. Just busy at work trying to get the kids to bed and stuff like that. So if I have to hop up for a second to take care of that, my apologies.
I've been digging through the back of the whiskey cabinet and found an Eagle Rare single barrel that I bought in 2020 and have not finished yet. So I'm working on that one, especially after our college fantasy draft did not work as planned last night. It was Fantrax sucks. If you've ever used it, you know.
I have not.
Yeah, I don't think we've yet to have a good experience with it back-to-back years.
No.
Or last 3 years, it's been a mess.
Yeah.
I think we had to totally do a redraft, first year?
I think so. Yeah. No, it's just a nightmare. When Yahoo or ESPN gets into college fantasy, it'll be a game changer.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and jump into the game. First and foremost, I do have to ask the burning question. Why does Hot Fox hate college football so much by putting this game at noon and hate us even more by having Gus Johnson call this game?
I am so glad to hear you say that because I am a longtime Gus and Joel denier. Like, people love them, and I am glad that people enjoy them. I do not like them. I do not think they're a good tandem. Like, I appreciate the fact that I actually kind of like Joel Klatt's non-game stuff a little bit more than I actually like him in game. But to me, both of them in game feel like they are trying to be this show, and I don't care. I don't want announcers who want to be the stars. I want announcers who want to give me some sort of insight and tell me what's going on and explain things that I wouldn't be able to understand as a fan. I love Jason Benetti. I loved him and Brock Heward for Fox. Brock is off, I think, coaching high school now. Love Mark Jones and whoever he's working with. I think most recently it was with Louis Riddick over on ESPN. I love those guys. But Gus and Joel, man, if I could get the sync up, and I'm sure you guys would do the same thing in a lot of cases, I would sync it up to the Ohio State radio broadcast. But like with streaming, that is so hard to do these days. I used to do it all the time on.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You're preaching to the choir on that. When Kirk Herbstreit started talking about lunatic fringe with Ohio State fans, I think he was talking about us. So Herbie is not. We're not a big fans of Herbie. Herbie's not a big fan of us. But Fox hates college football because they're a business. They don't actually care about the stuff that they're broadcasting. They saw an opening where, at the time when they started this, CBS had the SEC, and that was like their main window was 3:30. ESPN, ABC had the 8 p.m. window. So they're like, let's go to the place where we have the path of least resistance to getting the most viewers, and let's go with noon. And that's all well and good. Ohio State plays Michigan pretty much every year of my entire lifetime, except for a handful of 1 or 2 at noon. That's fine. But to do it every single big game, it is annoying for fans, but it also has a negative impact on the program because it hurts recruiting when you're flying guys in. When you're a national program, just like Georgia is, you're flying guys in who are playing games on Friday night. It makes it really hard to get guys from Texas or from Georgia or from California in for recruiting visits if your best games are at noon Eastern time. And then also, like, I've been to games at Sanford Stadium, and I'm sure it's the same in every stadium across the country. As good of an environment as it might be, regardless of time, it's better at 3:30 or 7 o'clock at night than it is at noon. So like it just hurts the atmosphere. It hurts Ohio State. It hurts the viewing experience, whether you're a Buckeye fan or not. So I understand that Fox is paying upwards of $7-8 billion for this now expanded Big Ten package. But like at some point, and we're going to get to what I actually think was going on in the last couple of days with this, like at some point, Ohio State and the Big Ten has to say, look, we get you spend a lot of money, but this is bad for the product. And in the long run, it's going to hurt your investment if you keep doing this and don't do it a little bit more intelligently in planning these things out.
Hmm. And then kind of last non-game related thing. So what kind of news of like just really all day was the news about Dave Portnoy being banned from the shoe. Obviously he's Fox's answer to Pat McAfee over on ESPN,
but still an
yeah,
issue.
like I mean, we talked about this before. Like I'm a Michigan guy. I grew up there, still a fan of Michigan and all that. But I find Dave to be a little much, to say the least. But was there a known push to make this happen by admin, or was this really truly a Fox decision not to let him go inside of any stadium? I guess at this point is what they said recently.
I have no idea what the true story is. I mean, everything is he said at this point. What I can tell you is I heard nothing. I mean, there was no talk of this at all until last night. That's the first I'd heard of it. It's the first time anybody on our staff had heard of it. This had not been like a groundswell of anything. Like it never even crossed my mind that this would happen. I don't know if the administration banned him. It would seem surprising to me that they would deny it because like you're an institution that is governed by freedom of information requests. So like if they send an email banning somebody, that would be discoverable. Like that's like you can't hide that. And maybe it was just a phone call, who knows? But like it would seem odd to me that they'd be lying about that. But if they did it, I know that people and all of the Michigan people in our mentions are saying it's soft. I love it. One, because I just think it's funny. Like I would just think it was funny that you banned a Michigan, known Michigan supporter, an outright douchebag Michigan supporter. Not speaking for all Michigan, but he
Right. No,
particularly
no.
Ohio State.
Dave is
Yeah,
up there.
Ohio State
I
has
get it.
plenty of them. Ohio State has plenty of them. We are not immune to that. But like to ban him after all the shit he talks, I hope you don't mind me swearing.
No, go ahead.
Like I think that would be funny. I just think that would be funny. But I think it also plays into what I was talking about earlier. Fox has gone out of its way with this hire to bring somebody into their team that is openly antagonistic against your biggest cash cow. And you add that onto the fact that like you are actively, not consciously, I don't think they're going out of their way. This is not like an ESPN SEC bias thing. Like, but like they're just by putting Ohio State on at noon all the time, like you're hurting the fan base. And then to go and hire him, to me, it's just like, okay, if Ohio State did ban him again, which I don't think they did, but I wouldn't mind if they did, like it would just be them standing up and saying, look, one, you should have consulted us. Two, you shouldn't have done it. And we're going to put our foot down and say he can't go in the shoe. I would, because Dave Portnoy is who he is, this all came out from a front office sports article that came out on Monday night. It would not shock me. I'm not saying this is what happened, but it would not shock me if Dave Portnoy was the source for the front office sports article and saying, I got banned. And then they run with the story. Then like legitimate reporters like Ross Dellinger from Yahoo said, like, the Ohio State AD on the record said it's not the case. The Big Ten has said this is not the case. So I don't know what's true. I don't actually care. I think the whole thing is funny. And maybe that's just because like, I mean, I wrote articles back in the day that like, I was hoping Jim Harbaugh never like was the coach at Michigan forever because I just thought he was weird enough to be entertaining. Like he was a weird dude and that was funny. Like that I think was good for the rivalry. Of course, I wrote those articles before Ohio State lost to Michigan at any point. But like, I just think it's good to have this kind of back and forth stuff in any rivalry. I mean, you guys know rivalries as well as anybody. Like, I think that's just fun to have some of this, I don't know, this kind of extracurricular stuff, especially at the beginning of a season when you don't play until the regular season finale.
Yeah.
And another point that I heard brought up about the Dave Portnoy thing is at this point, with the amount of money that he is allegedly funneling in to the Michigan program, how is it any different than Tom Brady for Fox not being able to participate in any pregame or pre-broadcast meetings with any of the teams because he was part owner of a team, and at this point, Dave is close enough. He's a college football version of a part owner of Michigan. And
Yeah.
having him be in the broadcast meetings just seems like that could get into Connor
Well,
Stalions territory quickly.
right. And there's a huge difference between Dave Portnoy and on Fox, and then they have Charles Woodson, but he's not on all the time. But like Desmond Howard for ESPN, another guy who I think is a blithering idiot and
Yeah, he's
it
off the rails.
completely
Absolutely.
but he's a Heisman Trophy winner and like a legitimate college football legend. So like he makes sense to have on game day. Same thing with Urban Meyer, a guy that I have absolutely no affection for whatsoever. When he was hired at Ohio State, I thought it was a terrible thing. I appreciate all the wins. I appreciate the national championship. But when he left, I was waving goodbye as quickly as possible. But like he's a 3-time college football national champion and a college football Hall of Famer. Like he makes sense, even if he is biased. This just makes no sense. And as you said at the top, it's just their answer to try to get the dude bros that are watching game day for Pat McAfee. But Pat McAfee also an all-pro punter in the NFL who has legitimate reason to be on a pregame show for college football.
And got close to winning a national title in 2007 at West Virginia. Like,
Dude, well,
it's actually
I will tell
funny.
You,
He's actually funny.
I will tell.
Thing.
If 2007, if they'd made it to the national championship, Ohio State would have won that national championship, but they lost, and Ohio State lost in one of 2 back-to-back national titles. But that's a conversation for another thing.
Has gotten to a title in a significant
yes,
period.
100%. Yes.
All right, so getting into the game, the positions with quarterbacks. So Julian Sayin is getting his first start. Is there any hesitancy from the fan base with the stat of quarterbacks getting their first start against the number 1 team being 0-18?
I mean, I think there's certainly hesitancy. I don't think it's about that stat because I mean, I have not done the research on this, but I can't imagine that many of those guys that have gone on 0-18 against the number 1 team in their first start are playing for the defending national champions and the number 3 team in the country. So like, I'm not worried about that stat. I think that's just a nice anomaly, but it is his first start. I mean, he only threw 12 passes last year as a true freshman. He only completed 5 of them. And some of the passes that he threw did not look great. Again, he was an 18-year-old college freshman. I don't put a whole lot on that, but it wasn't like he came in and like blew people away in the opportunities that he had as a true freshman. So I think there's certainly hesitancy. You're always going to be worried with a new starting quarterback because it is undoubtedly the most important position, arguably in all of sports, but certainly in football. I think there's cautious optimism. He was an incredibly highly sought after 5-star prospect. So you have to hope that Ohio State's quarterback brain trust of Ryan Day and quarterback coach Billy Fessler, like they know what they're doing. They've got a pretty good track record. So you just got to hope that he's ready. We'll certainly find out pretty quick. That's for sure. But in a 12-team playoff, though, like a 12-team playoff era, losing this game isn't the end of the world. So it's like what we see on Saturday is not the finished product going to be. So yes, of course, you always want to win these big games and you want to come out and show well because that only speaks of how much better you can get. But if he comes out and he looks a little wonky in his first start, okay, as long as there's stuff to grow on and build on, that's a positive. Obviously, you want to win, but as long as he doesn't look completely outclassed, like I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, as long as it's not Alex Orgy out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just have one more about the quarterback. So with Texas having a statistically good defense last year, we've gone on this podcast a number of times in depth on how that was a product of their schedule and not them actually being good. But statistically, they were good and they were able to get to the quarterback and had good defensive backs last season. Does that concern you in any way, or do you just think the power of the Ohio State offense is kind of able to take over to an extent?
Well, I mean, these 2 teams played last year. Like they played
Right.
in the Cotton Bowl and the college football playoff semifinals, and they held Ohio State to 21 offensive points. Ohio State won 28-14, but obviously anybody who was watching knows that Jack Sawyer had the scoop and score to put it up 28-14. They shut down Jeremiah Smith. I mean, Jeremiah Smith had 1 reception for 3 yards in that game. So I mean, that is certainly something to be concerned about. Now, just like Ohio State, Texas lost half of its team. They Ohio State lost, I think it was 52% of their production, so they're only returning 48%. Texas is only bringing back 51%. So it's about equal in terms of the production that was lost in returning. And arguably, while Ohio State probably lost more top-tier NFL quality players, you could say that Texas lost the best player from that game that went to the NFL in Kelvin Banks Jr., who was the big top 10 NFL draft pick DB. So of course, like, I mean, Texas has a great defense. They have a scheme. The nice thing about it is that it is a fairly different Ohio State offense theoretically than it would have been last year, because Chip Kelly was calling plays last year and is certainly much more run inclined than Brian Hartline will be calling plays for the first time. Ohio State did bring in the Virginia Tech defensive or offensive coordinator Tyler Bowen to be the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator. So it's not like Brian Hartline's just going to be out there chucking the ball around 60 times through the air. So there is a run game component to these play calling. But that's the one thing when you're like, okay, both teams lost a lot of talent. Texas did shut down Jeremiah Smith last year, although Will Howard did complete passes to 7 different receivers last year. So it wasn't like the entire passing game was shut down. But you just have to hope that like they can look at the film, make adjustments for how they are going to get the ball to JJ, and then kind of do some things different that Texas isn't going to expect, because there are new guys effectively running the show. Although this is always Ryan Day's offense, whether he's the coordinator or Chip Kelly's the coordinator, Brian Hartline's the coordinator. So it's going to be fairly similar, but you just got to hope that there's some new wrinkles in there because it is somebody different calling the plays.
All right, so moving into the running back room. So who's going to be taking over for Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson after last season?
Nobody as good as Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. The guy who's probably going to be the number one running back, and I would assume will probably distance himself from the field, is a true sophomore named James Peoples. He came in a top 110, 120 player in the class of 2024. Didn't get a whole lot of time last year just because Trey and Quinshon were who they were and they didn't need to. But every time he got to play, he looked pretty good. You know, he looked like a true freshman who had potential. And then they brought in CJ Donaldson, who has been kind of a spot starter, part-time starter for West Virginia for the last few years. I think he had like 700 to 800 yards in the last 2 seasons, averaged about 4.5 yards per carry. So a solid guy at a lower level P4 school. He's lost a ton of weight. He was kind of like a bowling ball guy at West Virginia, but he's gotten into much better shape. So I don't know how that will impact his burst, his durability, things like that. But I would imagine that James Peoples is going to be the primary back. They'll still rotate guys. So I'm sure Georgia does the same thing. When you could potentially play up to 16, 17 games in a season, you don't want to wear these guys down all that much, which is why Quinshon and especially Travion Henderson looked much more fresh in the postseason last year than they would have probably in previous seasons. So I think they'll rotate those guys through. I would imagine, though, when it comes to crunch time, James Peoples will be the bell cow. There's also a true freshman, no relation, but a true freshman named Bo Jackson. I wish there was a relation there. So, like, he's a guy who has been getting some really good pub out of both spring and fall camp. So he could get some touches, too. But, if you asked me what position group on Ohio State's team I'm most worried about there being a big decline, it's the running backs. It's just like they were so good last year, like arguably the best running back duo in the country, arguably the best running back duo in Ohio State modern history, maybe going back, 10, 15, 20 years. So that to me is the biggest concern, especially because you have, like we talked about, a first-year starting quarterback who doesn't necessarily have a stud running back to turn around and hand it to when times get tough.
I am a huge CJ Donaldson fan. For whatever
reason. Oh,
really?
Okay, good.
He caught my eye like his first year at West Virginia, and then, when he got to West Virginia, he split time between tight end, wide receiver, and running back. Like he just kind of did everything for them. And then when College Football 25 came out last year, I won multiple Heisman's and national championships with CJ Donaldson at West Virginia.
All right, let's go.
So I just, based on for whatever reason, he caught my eye as a freshman. It was probably like a Thursday night season opener, and he's been one of the guys that I've liked for his entire career. And
I love
was just checking Macon and somebody drafted him last night, and I can't pick him up, and I'm not happy about that.
Well, look, if James Peoples is available, he might be a guy to stash on the bench. Like he wouldn't be a
Oh
first
no, he was taken
week
in I think the
starter.
top 3 rounds.
Oh, that was probably a bad move, but that's okay. I won't. Yeah,
It wasn't
I
by
won't
me, so
talk
I'm
bad
okay with
about
it.
it.
Yeah, not
Okay,
me.
okay.
So honestly, no real questions about the wide receiver room, because they're obviously the best group in the country. Just kind of what Ohio State does at this point. But does the Texas secondary, after losing some of their better pieces in the offseason to the NFL, have a chance at slowing down the group as a whole?
I mean, I think that's tough. I mean, I think it's one of those things where you pick your poison. You always talk about that, especially in like baseball. You're like, don't let Barry Bonds beat you. Okay, if you don't let Jeremiah Smith beat you, there's just so much talent in that room. And what is different for Ohio State this year, even in previous years where they had, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Emeka Buka, Marvin Harrison Jr., Terry McLaurin, all of these guys, Garrett Wilson, and the list goes on and on, is that for the first time, I mean, really in 15, maybe 20 years, they have a legitimate weapon at tight end and Max Clare, who was the top transfer portal tight end coming over from Purdue, arguably in the running for the best tight end in the country in terms of skill position talents. So like you throw him into the mix with Jeremiah Smith. You've still got Carnell Tate, who was kind of like the third guy last year, now the second guy. Brandon Inniss, who was a 5-star #1 wide receiver a couple years ago, coming into his own, having been a kind of a situational wide receiver, but a stud on special teams. Like there's just so much talent. You got Quincy Porter, who is was a 5-star true freshman. So like there's just so much there. Like I don't know that you can ever completely shut them down. If you are going to do that, it's going to be because you get to Julian Sayin, and he just doesn't have time to get the ball to him. So that's where not having a running game, or at least not as strong of a running game, can hurt. But also having a guy like Max Clare who can be available out of the tight end position can help as well. So like if you're just saying the DBs versus the wide receivers, no, I think Ohio State's going to have an advantage against anybody in terms of that. But when you factor in the defensive line and the pass rush, like that's where you have to worry about a first-time starting quarterback not being able to utilize those weapons that could eventually kind of make things a little bit more talent equated on the outside.
Mike, you're muted.
Dang it. I knew it. It's once every episode, right? Um, the offensive line is going to be a major factor in this game, with Texas having a great front seven. So with how the Cotton Bowl went, allowing 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss, are you confident that the line can hold up against Ohio State's front seven, or against Texas front seven? Sorry.
Yeah. No. This is the first time in probably 5 or 6 years where like Ohio State fans are actually pretty confident in the offensive line. Like the offensive line last year ended up being pretty good, but the line that was in the entire postseason, but especially in that Cotton Bowl, wasn't Ohio State's best line because they lost the Remington winner Seth McLaughlin to a season-ending injury,
And
maybe
he learned how to
2/3 of the way through
snap
the regular
it
season.
last offseason.
Look, man, I'm gonna blame it on Jalen Milroe, like because when he got to Ohio State, there was no snap issues, and I don't say this because I'm glad that he went through what is obviously a very terrible situation in that bowl game. But I'm kind of glad it happened because that ended up getting him out of Tuscaloosa. But he got hurt, and then Ohio State's starting left tackle Josh Simmons also got hurt in a season-ending injury, so they had to move the line around. So while the offensive line really gelled well in the postseason for what it this year, it's a lot of those same guys who had to kind of be forced into spots, except they are off of a really good postseason run. And then whoever ends up starting at right tackle, we don't know who it's going to be, is going to be a transfer, either Ethan Onyanwa from Rice or Philip Daniels from Minnesota. So like Ohio State feels, both the team and the fans feel pretty confident with that offensive line. Like it's not, I mean, like to be quite honest with you, like the past couple of years, like it was the weak spot of the team. The offensive line was the weak spot, and it ended up getting better throughout the season. But I feel like they're pretty confident. Again, not as good of a running game not as experienced of a quarterback. It might not look as good on Saturday, but like in the long run, people are pretty happy with where the offensive line is right now, just because they're veteran guys. Like that's what you have to have at an offensive line is you have to have guys who have played a lot. This is not a position where you see true freshmen, even sophomores playing. It's third, fourth, fifth year guys, and that's what a lot of this offensive line is.
So, last question for the offense. How much do you think the coordinator change affects the offense with all of the new pieces and the new coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Hartline was named the offensive coordinator, I think, 3 seasons ago. And we just all assumed that that meant that he was going to be taking over play calling. I had been talking about Ryan Day needing to give up play calling for years, like going back to the at least 2001 season. Because I think in today's day and age, I know there are guys that do it, but when it's a program like Ohio State or a program like Georgia, there is just so much that a head coach has to do that he doesn't have time to be scribbling things on a chalkboard and figuring game plans out. So when Brian Hartline was named the offensive coordinator, I was like, okay, give him the responsibility, work him into it. But then, like, once they got through the spring game, Ryan Day was like, I'm calling plays still. That didn't inspire a lot of confidence in Brian Hartline being able to do that job, at least not at that time. Then they brought in Chip Kelly, and obviously Ryan Day trusts Chip Kelly. He was his college coach. He's worked with him for years at various stops in the NFL and college. So he trusted him completely to give him that opportunity. Chip Kelly goes back to the NFL, and now you're back to a spot where you don't want Ryan Day to take that responsibility back over. But do you trust Brian Hartline to do it? Like, I feel like you kind of have to keep giving Brian Hartline opportunities and promotions however you can. Otherwise, he's going to go and be, I don't know, a head coach somewhere else. I don't know if he would do that. He's a guy who has NFL money, so maybe he doesn't ever have to do that if he doesn't want to leave Ohio State. But like, the opportunity was there. It made sense. I don't know what to expect from this. Like it is a completely new thing. I am generally not a fan of guys doing things for the first time at Ohio State. Same thing with, with Georgia. Like, prove yourself somewhere else and then come and do it here. That was the one reason why I was hesitant with Ryan Day getting the job as a head coach. He did very well as an offensive coordinator, but he'd never been a head coach. And I think we've seen the growing pains in the first couple of years of Ryan Day. And I think he's finally slowly turned the corner there. I'm hoping that it's not as bad with Brian Hartline because Ryan Day has been in that position, can help get him there. And like I mentioned, Tyler Bowen is there as kind of a quasi co-offensive coordinator to help facilitate the run game. So I am worried about it. Like, I don't think Brian Hartline's an idiot. Like, I think he knows how to call plays and knows how to get guys in positions, but it's his first time doing it. So it's just kind of be wait and see. I think there will obviously probably be more of a reliance on the passing game than there was under Chip Kelly, which makes sense. I mean, you've got the best wide receiver group in the country, and that is what you have built your name on as a coach and a recruiter, as Brian Hartline. So we'll have to wait and see. Like, I'm anxious. I mean, with all, anytime Georgia has done it, like when you start a season against a good team, like it's a lot of, I don't know. Ohio State plays Grambling State and then Ohio in the next couple of weeks. Like, it would be much different if we started with those two and then they played Texas. But going into a game like this, you just kind of have to, close your eyes a little bit and hope that what you see through the cracks in your fingers is good.
All right, so moving over to the defense, obviously Ohio State lost a lot in the draft, not just in quantity, but as well as leaders on that side of the ball. So how do you think that impacts the defense this year?
Well, I mean, I think the one area where it hurts the most is the defensive line, because when you have guys like Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and even Tyleik Williams, who is a lesser known guy in the middle, they played a ton. Like, it just feels like they had been there forever. And really they'd been starters for 3 years. They even played as true freshmen. They came in together. So the defensive line is going to be where that hurts the most. You still have Sonny Styles, who is going to be at linebacker. He's a captain. He's wears the block O, which is like the hardest working guy on the team. He gets that honor. And you've got Caleb Downs, who is arguably the best defensive player in the country in the secondary. You have Davidson Igbinosun, who was a starter at corner last year. He is back. So like the attrition at the linebacker and the secondary levels is like normal college football attrition, where like you lose some guys, but you've got some guys back. It's the defensive line where you lost all four. You lost all four starters. Now, what's different about that is because all four of those guys were seniors, they were fourth-year players. The guys behind them are still veterans. Like to be honest with you, there's only two guys on this defense that are going to be sophomores. One's going to be one of the tackles in Edric Houston. He was a five-star guy in the 2024 class. And the other one is Jalen McClain, who's going to be a defensive back who is also a sophomore. So it's like most of these guys have a lot of experience in the program, just not as much experience on the field because of how much the guys ahead of them played. So Ohio State is, along with Alabama, is tied in the blue chip ratio for like 89% of the roster is blue chip players. So like there's good players behind the guys who left. So like assuming those guys who came in as high quality players have developed and then they stayed. So I mean, like they have to buy into the program somehow. So like it's not hair on fire panic, but like I was talking about on the other side of the ball, like you just don't know. Like these guys haven't played a ton. So it'll be interesting. The nice thing about it is with Ohio State breaking in 4 new defensive linemen, Texas is breaking in 5 new offensive linemen. So like they lost their complete offensive line as well. So it's like it's strength on strength on the other sides with Ohio State's offensive line and their defensive line, but it's also kind of like, I don't want to say weakness, but it's like question mark versus question mark when Texas has the ball.
So, kind of digging into that just a little bit more. So, based on the numbers I found, Ohio State lost around 5 guys that played a significant time in the front 7. And Texas is returning one of the top SEC rushers last season, getting back C.J. Baxter. And Arch is a mobile guy. How concerned are you about that running game?
What's nice about the way, at least last year, again, we talked about Brian Hartline being a new offensive coordinator. Matt Patricia is a new defensive coordinator. So we don't exactly know what he is going to do from his scheme. I think it'll probably be fairly similar to what Jim Knowles did. They are both 4-2-5 guys, but Matt Patricia's never done it at college. But we think, at least from what we've seen in practices and what we saw in spring ball, that it'll be at least fairly similar. What that means is they have 2 really athletic linebackers. They only start 2 linebackers, but Sonny Styles started his career as a safety and then moved to linebacker last year. Arvell Reese is another incredibly athletic guy. So like in the run game, they're going to have 6 guys potentially in the box if they need to that can move and make plays. What that means, beyond that, who knows? Caleb Downs, we saw in the second half of the season, went from being the deep free safety because he's the best athlete on the field. And then after they lost to Oregon, they started moving him up into the box and let his athleticism help in the run game, cover tight ends, cover running backs out of the backfield. So if they continue to use Caleb Downs that way, that just makes it like 7 guys in the box that you have to contend with. So like, I feel pretty good about that. Of course, if you do that with Caleb, then you have to worry about some young corners and safeties handling things over the top. But again, in a talent equated game like a Texas and Ohio State will be, you just kind of have to hope that the game plan and the schemes line up well in your favor. And it's hard to really judge that when you have a new defensive coordinator. Granted, Matt Patricia has had an incredible career, won multiple Super Bowls, but I think the last time he was a college coach was in like 2001 as a GA at Syracuse. So like it's a completely different game. College offenses are completely different for the most part than NFL ones are. So like I don't know. Like I hate to keep saying like I don't know, maybe, but like there's that much turnover on the roster and in the coaching staff, I don't know. Like I mean, I think we know, but it's hard to be really secure in making any declarative statements like that.
As you probably saw when you brought Matt Patricia's name, just the pain in my face came up. Again, as a
you're
Lions
a Detroit guy,
yeah. As a Lions fan, is there something that you can say about Matt Patricia that will make me hate him less? And has he lost weight? Because he looks like he has.
He's lost a ton of weight, so I don't know if that will the game for a year, like focusing on his health and workout, or if it's an Ozempic thing. Either way, no shade, but like he does look
Yeah.
like a completely different guy. I would not recognize him. My brother, although we are born and bred Columbus natives, Ohio State fans, my brother is a diehard Lions fan as well. He, like, Barry Sanders was his favorite player growing up, so like he's in one of those weird Ohio State Detroit Lions fans. So when
Let's say
Matt Patricia was
why would he
named,
do that to himself? That like I try to get my kids not to like blind.
I know it is so weird, and it's so painful, especially these last few years when it's been like, oh, they're really good, and then like, they're still the Lions. They get to the
Same old
postseason
Lions,
and they're
yeah.
still the Lions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything I can tell you. Like, I haven't seen him with a pencil behind his ear as much this year, so like maybe that's a help. I don't know. You know, I was suspect of this hire for a number of reasons. One, because like he's not really had any success when Bill Belichick wasn't involved. So like, does that mean that the success was actually Bill Belichick's? I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not saying it is, but like, it's a question. He also has some shady things in his past. It's a question.
Yeah.
So I wasn't fully on board. The thing that I will say is that all of the players have uniformly been very positive about their interactions with him. Would they say anything otherwise publicly?
Right.
No, of course not. But I also don't think that they would be as effusive in it. You know, you can usually tell when guys are like, yes, he's been good. I have enjoyed playing for him, rather than as exuberant as they have been. I do think like his fire equates itself well to college. We'll have to wait and see, you know, what that means. But like, he's done everything that you would expect a guy who's coming in to a program like this to rehabilitate his image, not like his personality, but like he kind of sucked in Detroit and sucked in Pitt and Philadelphia. So like he
Yeah.
needs a win after being out of football for a year.
Mm.
So Ohio State had a top three passing defense last season, lost some guys to the draft, as you would expect. Texas may not have Ohio State level wide receivers, but they do have some very good ones. How well do you think the secondary does on Saturday?
The secondary is one of those places where like, because Ohio State had guys um, Denzel Burke, who had been around for a long time, that there just hasn't been as much depth built up there. As I mentioned, Caleb Downs is back. You know, I think most people think that he's the best defensive player in the country. You also have Davidson Igbinosun, who is back, who was like the number 2 cornerback last year, but he was a guy who, if you ever watched an Ohio State game and there was a defensive pass interference, it was probably called on him. So like those are the 2 main guys that are back. You've got like I mentioned, Jalen McClain, who's a sophomore, who's going to be starting at the other safety. Jermaine Matthews Jr. is a junior. He's going to be the other starting cornerback. And while both of those guys played, especially Jermaine Matthews, last year, like it's been spurts and stops. Like okay, they've looked really good in their limited time, but you know, Ohio State has for decades now called their secondary BIA, for best in America. That has been true at some points, not so true at other points. And they are starting to kind of get back to that with Tim Walton as the secondary coordinator and cornerbacks coach. Matt Guerreri is the safeties coach. They're starting to get back to that. Like they're recruiting like you would think Ohio State should at that level, which they hadn't been doing for 3 or 4 years before that. So like they've got the talent. Like I don't see any reason why you wouldn't think that with 2 veterans returning, 2 younger guys coming in, they've got a lot of good depth at with young guys behind them. So like I think the secondary should be fine. Will there be growing pains because there's new starters? Probably, but that's true of every team because this is college football. And I think that's what's so different with college football than the NFL. Like, yes, there's free agency and retirements and stuff in the NFL, but like for the most part, you can accept that what you had last year is mostly going to be the same because people are on multi-year contracts. In college, you're turning guys over every year. So like the fact that Ohio State lost 50% of its production, as Texas did as well, like that might be extreme, but like, okay, what's normal? 75 to, 2/3 because guys can leave early. Like that's normal at a program like Ohio State, like Texas, like Georgia, where you're just losing guys. So that's just part of the equation of being a college football fan, is that early in the season, you're going to be nervous about whether young guys can step up and fill the roles of guys who left for the NFL.
And we do have two questions that we forgot to put in here. But what are you most concerned about for the game on Saturday?
Um, I mean, I mentioned some of the positional stuff with, like the running backs, like I'm worried about that. But um, the thing that I'm most worried about is that Ryan Day regresses to the Ryan Day we've seen in some previous big games. Like I think one of his best coaching jobs was when Ohio State lost to Georgia in
Yeah.
the college football playoffs. Like you did not, I was like obviously was upset that they lost, but like I had no complaints about that game. He's done great against he had in the second game, college football playoff game against Clemson. No complaints about that. They blew Clemson out of the water. But like in a lot of other big games, he has been unnecessarily conservative. We talk about him like going into a turtle shell. He has this thing that some of the Michigan coaches started a few years ago talking about how Ohio State was a finesse team. And then like Ryan Day has gotten it into his head that he has to prove that they're tough. Like I I don't care if you're tough, just win the like you have the best collection of wide receivers in the country. You have at least against Michigan, like you have unmitigated talent advantage in terms of offensive skill positions. Like go out and use it, like do it. I don't know why he's been scared, not just against Michigan, but in other games as well, to just be the team that he has built. I think, knock on wood, that the experience of losing four straight games to Michigan, especially last year when, Mike, I don't think you'll disagree with me. Like Ohio State should not have lost that game. They were on paper a far better team. Like
You
when
lost
you
to a
just look at the
Make-A-Wish kid at
talent,
quarterback.
yeah, like there's no reason that they should have lost other than the fact that Ryan Day was in his head. And I
Yeah.
feel like the team we saw in the playoffs for that 4-game run, which I think is arguably the best 4-game run in Ohio State history, maybe even college football history. Obviously, I am biased, but like if he coaches like that, like I'll put them up against anybody. Like they're fine. Like I mean, they're going to lose some games, but like if you do that, like I'm never going to be mad about what happens. But like after the Michigan game, I tried to resist it as much as I could, but I was like, it's time. Like Ryan Day has proven that he is not ready for the job, and then he went out and did what he did in the playoffs, and he proved me wrong, which I'm very happy about. So as long as he doesn't regress, I'm fine. Like just go out and coach a good game. If you lose, you lose, but it's a 12-team playoff era. You can lose twice at Ohio State and still make the playoff and you're fine. So like that's the thing that worries me is that Ryan Day will forget the lessons that he learned in the playoff run and go back to being turtle shell Ryan Day in big games.
Yeah.
And then, what are you most confident in for the game?
Man, that's a good question. I would normally say like Jeremiah Smith is going to be Jeremiah Smith, but like we saw Texas shut him down. I mean, I think the easy answer is I feel like there's enough wide receiver talent to make up for that if that happens. But that's an easy answer, so I don't want to do that. Um, I think I'm most confident besides that in the fact that I'll say this. We talked about the noon games at the top of it. Ohio State is trying. I don't know. Like, are you guys are familiar with Ross Bjork, who's was the Texas A&M
Hmm.
AD, the Ole Miss AD. He's now Ohio State's AD. Nobody likes him in Columbus. Like,
You could
we
have
didn't
just
understand
stopped
why
after
a guy
nobody
who,
likes him.
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. But like, why do you
Okay.
go and get a guy who like misused a crap ton of booster and NIL money at two different schools and we didn't understand the hire, still don't understand the hire. But one of the things that he's really tried to do this year is like create these new traditions. And I think a lot of it is in response to the fact that noon games are hard to get fans up for. So like they're doing these things with like ringing the victory bell before the game, which
Ooh,
do it
Yeah, that
after they
seems
win.
like
I
a
don't understand.
bad choice.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
understand, but like Archie Griffin's ringing it first. So like anytime you get
Yeah.
Archie Griffin to do something at Ohio State, like people are going to be on board. I think they're also like kind of trying to get rid of like the DJ thing. Like I don't know if Sanford Stadium did it, but like they're doing DJs and like just letting the band do it, which is like it's
Mhm.
Ohio State. We love the band, so let the band
Yeah.
do the thing. So I think but what I mean is that whether it's that or just the magnitude. Ryan Day at his press conference on Tuesday talked about like we need the fans to show up. Like we need this to be the rowdiest it can possibly be. And I think they'll show up for this game. Like we've seen even in noon games against Penn State or Michigan or whoever, like the fans can do it. Ohio Stadium, because of the way that previous athletic directors have prioritized boosters getting the best seats. Like there have been games where it's just like it's fine. Like I mean, like if it's
The
close,
tea and
the
crumpets
fans are going to
crowd is
get there.
real
But
quiet.
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
we've talked about that a
yeah,
lot
it's
with
just
the
like
fans, yeah.
yeah, it's just like, and I understand, like you got to pay the bills. It's, at a place like Ohio State, a place like Georgia, it's expensive, and you have to keep up with the Joneses in terms of the facilities, and now with NIL and all that stuff. So like I understand, but it does, much like the whole thing with Fox, it has a negative impact on the in-game environment. I feel like because it's the first game of the season, because it's coming off of a national championship, because it's against Texas, because of to me at least, and maybe this is just my bias, like it seems to me like the national media is much more siding with Texas than Ohio State, and using the Ohio State lost so many players, but like Texas did too. So like I feel like that, might get under the fans' craw a little bit. So I feel like the fan base is going to turn out and going to turn out well. Will that make a difference in the game? Who knows? But like I feel like the environment is going to be as good as it possibly can for a noon game in August.
Yeah.
All right, and last thing is we ask you to pick some games. We give you the spread and the over under. We're just asking for a straight up pick. So first one, LSU going to the other Death Valley, Clemson, who is a 3.5 point home favorite, over under 57.5.
I'm taking Clemson. I think as much as it pains me with my entire soul, like with all due hatred to everything in Ann Arbor, I hate nobody in college football more than Dabo Sweeney. So like it pains me to not even root, just to pick Clemson. But I'm taking Clemson. I'd probably go with the over if I have to do that, just because I feel like it's an early season. Might be sloppy. There might be some funny stuff going on there.
You got two great quarterbacks there too, so there's that.
Yeah, exactly.
Notre Dame going to Miami. Notre Dame 2.5 point road favorite, over under 49.5.
I have said on our podcast for years, programs like Texas, programs like Miami, programs like Penn State, programs like USC, I am not going to put a lot of faith in you until you prove to me that you can do it. With all due respect to Sark and Arch Manning, like that's one reason why for this next one, I'm going to pick Ohio State, but of course I am. But same reason I'm not putting much stock into Penn State, because they are still coached by James Franklin. Same thing with Miami. Yeah. Prove to me you can win a big game. And I don't even know if this would qualify, because it's a 12-team playoff, and like you could lose this and still make it. But like, I'm going to take Notre Dame. Like, I don't think Notre Dame is like an upper echelon team, but they're that next tier, and I think they're solid enough. And of course, Buckeye fans love Marcus Freeman. So I'll take Notre Dame -2.5. I'd probably go the under on this, just because Notre Dame likes to get into rock fights. So we'll see.
Carson Beck likes to throw picks, so it's perfect.
True.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I forgot that's where he ended up.
Oh boy.
We don't let anyone forget, because it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is he 30 yet? Is he 30? Is that how old he is?
His hairline is for sure.
Right? Yeah.
Well, look, I'm not going to ever talk about anybody's hairline, since I have no hair. So I'll let
I'm
you guys do that.
I'm not that far behind you, Matt.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, Notre Dame's offense got better, and somehow they're projected to be worse. Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's some Josh Pate math right there. Anyways.
It's national narrative stuff. It's national media narrative stuff.
And then we've already kind of hinted at this one. Texas at Ohio State. Ohio State 2-point favorite, over under 48.
I mean, I'm going to take Ohio State. I mean, of course I'm going to take Ohio State. The over under is an interesting number. I think I will go over, just because, again, it's early season. I could see there being some defensive scores, or turnovers that lead to pretty easy offensive scores. So where it doesn't rely totally on the first year starting quarterback. Obviously, Arch Manning started a couple games last year, but they were against cupcakes. But yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a fun game. If I'm putting on my Homer hat, like I'm going to take Ohio State like 31-20, just because why not? If I'm trying to be a little bit closer to objectivity, like I could see it being a 27-24 game. Like I think there'll be some points put up, but I'll still take Ohio State -2.
Mm.
We appreciate you coming on and talking to us. It is always a good time to have you all on. But we got a few things to close out on. So if you'd like to plug anything, and then we appreciate it.
I don't know how many of your listeners care about Ohio State football otherwise, but you can always follow us on Twitter at LandGrant33. Head over to LandGrantHolyLand.com. The one thing we will say, like I don't super know the Georgia beat well, but the one thing I will say about the Ohio State beat is there is way too many people covering the Ohio State football team, and every single one of the other outlets is like people who rely on access to write a single article. We don't. We're just bloggers, man. We're just fans. We like to have a good time. We aren't beholden to anything. So we tell it like we see it. Sometimes that pisses off people like Kirk Herbstreit and everybody else. And we wear that with pride because generally when we say something and people get mad at us, they come around to saying the exact same thing 6 months later and then act like they came up with it in the first place. So if that's the kind of coverage you want for an Ohio State team, find us at landgrantholyland.com.
Y'all are the Ohio State version of us because we do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Perfect.
We called Florida State sucking last May, May, and we had multiple people from the national media come on and essentially tell us that we're idiots for Florida State to go 2-10. And it's like, I'm not gonna say I told you so, but we both know I did.
We made them give us our flowers when they would come back on, even a couple weeks ago, our last guest.
Yeah. Good. That's the way you should do it.
We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk to you again in the playoff at some point.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun if they both end up making it or end up facing each other at some point.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you guys. Have a good one.
Too.
All right. We appreciate Matt for coming on and talking to us again. This is the third time we've had those guys on. And it's always good. They're very, very knowledgeable about the team, and we truly do think they're Ohio State version of what we do. And just we enjoy talking to the guys that do it for the love of the game and not because they feel like they're important because they have a conference call with Kirby Tuesday at 10.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this episode will be coming out on Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, and then Thursday night, me and Caleb are going to do the game picks while watching the game on our respective televisions. So that'll be coming out Friday morning. Make sure to listen to that. Make sure to come to the watch party on Tybee September 13th. We're doing them for every away game this year. It's going to be a ton of fun. But most importantly, y'all remember there's nothing finer in the land
than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan.